Hello, and welcome to possibly the second episode of the Anointed Bacon Podcast. We are so glad you are here. This is your friend Sam.
And this is Micah.
And today we will be talking about something definitely different than the metaphorical last week, which you may or may not hear.
There's a chance that we won't upload it. We'll see. The thing last week's was really just a test run, but we'll see. You might get to see it.
It's very interesting. It really opens the door into kind of what the Anointed Bacon Podcast is, but more importantly, what me and Micah are. So
that's not what we're talking about today.
That is not what we're talking about today. Why don't you give the listener a little bit of a head start?
All right. So today we're going to be going over our top 10 movie soundtracks, which I'm really excited to do. This list was not easy to make for me. There was a lot of stuff to go over, but I think before we get to the list, I want to kind of go over our musical preferences.
But before you get to that, I do want to add something right there. Mine was hard to make probably in a different sense than yours was.
Okay.
Mine was not hard as in like discerning between, okay, man, there's so many good movie soundtracks out there. No, it was really more, okay, what movies have I watched that have good soundtracks, like have memorable soundtracks? Because it was difficult for me to find 10. And once I found 10, it was kind of hard for me at that point to just have 10, because I did find some more. But I think a lot on my list are not known, maybe not known for having really great soundtracks.
Okay, that's interesting, because I did try to prioritize the actual music. I mean, I didn't pick any, I don't think, bad movies, but I did try to prioritize the music. I also tried to keep it within the realm of movies that I've seen, which was kind of challenging because there's a lot of really awesome soundtracks out there that are from movies that I just haven't watched.
I did. I'm glad you mentioned that. I did take a movie, and it's actually pretty high on my list. I took a movie that it's a pretty mid movie, but because of the soundtrack, it got boosted like
it makes it good
tenfold. Like it
Wow.
made it a good movie.
Okay, interesting. So have you seen that movie or?
Oh yeah. So there's only about that. There's only one on my list that I haven't seen.
Same with me. There's only
one
that I there's only one that I haven't seen. All the rest I have watched, which, like I said, will unfortunately leave out some really great soundtracks, because I feel like, and we were talking about this the other day, at the end of the day, the point of the soundtrack is to enhance the film. It's a lot of soundtracks can stand on their own, but their purpose and their role is to accompany this film and to add to the viewer experience. And I think that's a pretty important thing when you're trying to take all these awesome soundtracks and think, okay, which one is the best? Which one accomplishes its job most eloquently? Which
is part of the reason that I think that I ended up having some movies that aren't amazing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They're not really great movies. Like one of my movies, I was doing some research on it. It actually like totally flew under the radar. It's a really it's a fairly big budget movie, but like it just wasn't really popular. I don't even remember what year it was made. But anyway, I do have a note here. So just because like one of my movies is ranked higher than the other doesn't mean that the soundtrack is necessarily better.
Yes, that is the same with mine. Mine can change on a dime.
Yeah, mine can change, but part of my criteria was, okay, does it fit the movie?
Yes.
Does it fit the movie so well that it fits it better than other? So like there's a couple on here that I probably like the soundtrack better than the other one, but it's ranked lower on my list. But for the movie as a whole, the music helped the movie out a lot more.
Okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting way.
So like my number 2, the soundtrack is probably just as good as some of the others, but it made the movie probably like 100 times better. It just made it so much better that it had to go high on the list. Okay,
that's an interesting way to look at it. I didn't really take that into consideration, but thinking about that now, that's definitely, obviously a very important thing. And I did think of how it was in the movie, but in terms of like how much each soundtrack affected its movie, I didn't think about it too much, but I don't know. I think our lists will be pretty different.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I don't think there's
going to be a whole lot of overlap, which makes it exciting.
Actually, before we get started, I want to take a little bet here. I want to say that we don't have a single one that overlaps.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you sure? I brought some pretty like.
I have some.
I don't know.
Actually, okay. I'm pretty. I don't know if I want to say that. I'm pretty sure that there isn't much overlap, if there is at all. Maybe one, but that's my gamble. That's my gamble.
Because I mean, I don't know. I'm excited to see if there's any overlap at all. It definitely won't be a lot.
I don't think there will be. I'm just going to say I don't think there will be.
Okay, a bold claim coming from Sam. All right, so I want to get to the list, but real quick before we get into that, I want to kind of talk about our musical preferences. Excuse me, just a little bit. So, Sam, when you're thinking of when you're jamming to something, what's your go-to?
So okay, so let's just I'm gonna let the listener in on a little secret. My musical taste is it's like a Neapolitan ice cream. Is that how you say it?
I think so. I don't know how else you would say it.
I really don't I don't have a specific kind of music, but I will tell you this. So I make a little bit of music, and like we said that in the last episode, if you get to hear it. But like anything on this podcast is made by us, and so far it's been me.
Yeah, I haven't done anything yet, but
like our intro, you've definitely heard that. If you're this far in the podcast, you've definitely heard the intro. I made that personally, and I mean, not to brag or anything. It's not that good, honestly. Like it's just a little motif, and that's it. But I say that to say, I draw a lot of my inspiration from jazz and like fusion type things. So if I want to listen to something to actually answer Micah's question, probably straight to Snarky Puppy. Then if it's not Snarky Puppy, and if you haven't listened to Snarky Puppy, I highly recommend.
I've listened to some. I've listened to like some of the stuff you've recommended, and I mean it blew me away. It's incredible.
There's no words, by the way.
It is all instrumentals.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they actually have. Well, I take that back. They have done things with words, but most of the stuff I listen to does not have words. But okay, so
Same with me.
If it's my go-to, yeah, definitely with Micah. If it's my go-to, I can listen to rock. I listen to probably the least of what I listen to is rap. I don't listen to that as much. I can listen to it because I'm in some settings in which rap is the go-to. Like there's certain people I hang out with where that's all they listen to.
Right.
But I can listen to country. But really my inspiration and my heart kind of lies in that jazzy fusion, kind of like a little bit more technical. I don't want to call it technical, but more, it's not just 4 chords and call it done.
Right.
So that's all I want to say. So you go ahead and let the listener in on your dirty little secret there.
Okay, so and I wouldn't be surprised if our musical tastes are reflected in our soundtrack choices, but I pretty much only listen to classical music, and Sam's laughing at me already, but I do want to clarify that doesn't mean that I don't like other music. That doesn't mean I'm against it. I haven't gotten into it, and at this point now I'm almost intimidated to start because there's so much. I mean, you've listed just then like 5 different genres, and I'm a noob in all of this, so it's kind of scary almost to me to dive into some of that stuff. But I like it. But if I'm going to sit down and listen to something, it's going to be something classical, whether it be something from Beethoven, or whether I move it up to Tchaikovsky or Ravel or Stravinsky or just anybody.
No one knows who these people are.
Oh, hey, well, listen, we'll have to do an episode. I'll give some suggestions because there's some. I think the thing is with classical music is that there's so much more beyond what people generally see, like what people see in like commercials and in just jingles and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's very bare bones, simple stuff. There's a whole other world out there, which is
better not mess with Micah and his classical music.
Well, it's had such a massive influence on me, so I guess I get not protective about it, but
defensive is the word.
I will defend. I will die on the hill that classical music is not just some like little preppy.
Well, I'm with you there because I took a class. It was like a dual enrollment class for college, and is called music appreciation. And basically what you do is you have to learn a little bit of music theory. You have to learn pretty much basic music stuff that you need to know. And then you sit down and they would teach us how to enjoy a song. And it's all classical music, obviously. But along with that, it actually went through, along with knowing what to listen for and all the intricate parts of classical music and just all music in general, it taught you the history of where this stuff, and a lot of it actually lies, I was surprised, in the church over time. Like, really, like, music originated in the church. It all originated from...
As I've also found, if you go back far enough to people like Bach and stuff like that, a lot of it, the composing that they were doing was not like freelance. It was all for religious purposes. It wasn't really until you started to get to people like Beethoven, when he was just putting out stuff just because he liked it, kind of thing. And that just wasn't the dynamic at the time.
And there was actually about that. There was like certain things that were like too complicated for the church. There's certain chords that you're not allowed to play.
Yes, yeah.
Because it's just too... I think it actually took a split in the church because like some wanted to be a little bit more, like they wanted harmony,
a little bit more progressive with harmony,
and they wanted like harmony in their music, and like the OG church was like, no, we ain't having that.
Can't having that. We got to have like Gregorian chant or whatever, maybe. Yeah.
But
I mean, I know I could talk for hours on the progression of classical music from its earliest infancies to now. I mean, there's so much change.
Yeah, Micah's the expert, and I know like just enough to kind of amuse Micah, I guess.
But then with Sam, that's the opposite. I know almost nothing about what he listens to except for what he's shown me, and then he knows a lot more than I do. But anyway, that's just a little. And
we'll probably do it like an episode on like actual music that we listen to.
I think definitely.
And that'll definitely be
a pretty big impact on both of our lives.
There'll definitely be like quite a contrast between, like I'll pull out some like. So I was actually thinking about that idea, and you guys can let us know in like the comments and stuff what y'all think about this. But I was like thinking about an idea of music that has had an impact on us. Because a prompt for one of these podcasts I thought would be, okay, top 10 favorite music. Well, I don't really like the favorite thing, and even with this, it's so objective and it can move around so much.
Right.
And it's like, I don't even like saying one song's better than the other. But I will say that certain songs have left an impact on my life.
Yes, I think we could both come up with a good amount.
And like from like my middle school days, like what the music I was listening to then is vastly different from what I listen to now.
Yeah.
And if you were to ask me, like, just based on my music taste now, I wouldn't like those songs from middle school. But they had such a huge impact on where I am today and what I listen to today.
Like your musical journey, so to speak.
And especially, like, with what I played on drums, played on piano, guitar,
and then eventually what you've begun to compose.
Yeah.
It's a very clear progression, I think. I think for both of us it would be. But,
so, we got that out of the way. So let's get straight into it. I think Micah's going to start us out. So, do you have two honorable mentions?
I do have two honorable mentions. I want to go
So we have a top 10 list. And let's just restate the prompt here. We have our top 10 favorite movie soundtracks. And we're going to be going over them. And kind of how the structure is going to work is we're going to present them. And then we're going to listen to them together. And we'll link down below, like the what we're
selections
listening
that we go to,
and then we're going to come back, and then we're going to discuss kind of what we are hearing, and we're probably going to move pretty quickly. We want to get through them because we each have 2 honorable mentions in the top 10. So let's just go straight into his number 12, which is his first honorable mention.
Yes, let's just start off. So this first one was actually a movie that I had put on my top 10 list at first, and then I took it off for different reasons, mainly because I thought of better ones. That would be Home Alone.
Oh, wow.
So it's not the first John Williams score that comes to mind when you think of the master that John Williams is. But when I first watched Home Alone I guess it was a few years ago, I mean, I knew it was by John Williams, so I was obviously expecting something good. and it's great. I mean, it's playful. He uses a lot of the similar motifs throughout the movie. So at one point you have like the nice, happy Christmassy music, and then you've got kind of the sly, kind of not creepy, but kind of creepy music, I guess, when Kevin, the boy's in his house getting away from the criminals or whatever. It's so happy, and it's a great movie. I love the movie, but the soundtrack, I think, accompanies it really nicely and really just, I think it ties it all together.
Yeah, I think that movie is made significantly better by that soundtrack.
It really just adds, I think, another level of depth.
And I would be lying if I said I actually didn't think about that, because I did. It didn't make it anywhere on my list.
Oh, so you did think of it, really?
I did think of it. And the only reason it probably isn't on my list, that's a great soundtrack, by the way. It took a movie. I don't want to say that Home Alone's mid, because that will get me flamed.
Yeah.
But like, it's an okay movie. Like, I mean, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
But it's not like top 10 best movies ever made.
Oh yeah, of course. And it's also one of those movies.
It has no right having that good of a soundtrack. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's fair. The movie and I think it is a good movie, but it is kind of, it's almost another level of comedy that you have this great score.
Yeah.
For like such a funny, it's a movie that doesn't take itself seriously kind of thing.
So before we talk about it anymore, let's quickly just get right into listening.
Yeah.
Me and Micah. So we'll link this down below, and you guys can listen to it. But we'll be right back. So welcome back, and just before we say anything else, I'll say this again. Home Alone has no right having such a good soundtrack.
It's good. Because, I mean, I was compiling the list, and like I said, originally Home Alone was like my number 7 spot. So I listened to it then. But just listening to it here now, I was like, man, this is so, like, it's so Christmassy. It's so light. It works, I think, so well with what the movie is trying to accomplish. And it's pretty impressive, I think.
And I didn't realize till like just now, it's obviously by John Williams. I didn't realize the level of Harry Potter inspiration, or I guess I don't know. This was before Harry Potter.
I think so.
So I think it's actually more of a Harry Potter sounds like Home Alone kind of thing, which is kind of a funny thing to say.
Yeah. But I've never watched Harry Potter, I know. But,
neither have I. So yes, I wanted to mention that. Me and Micah, I think I'm going to go as long as possible without watching Harry Potter. I've watched I think I've watched certain bits of it. Maybe.
Really? I've listened to some of the music solely because it's John Williams. But.
Yeah, I mean, like, the music is great.
And he only did like the first 2.
So I will say this, you will not find Harry Potter on...
Yeah, sorry to all the
my list.
Potter fans out there.
Just because I haven't watched it. So, and like I said, there is one on here that I haven't watched, but it's just because I know it's a good one.
Right.
And I'm excited to actually listen to that again. It's been a while. So...
All right, so I guess
before I say that, I want to say one more thing about Home Alone. I would love to hear like that level. That's definitely like a number 1 level, like Christmas soundtrack. But I'd like to hear that in like Elf. I feel like that would be awesome in Elf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think the music in some of the Christmas movies out there aren't. They definitely don't live up to what John Williams said.
But like, because he took something that's very familiar, and then he added his own twist. Which I know that sounds very cliche, but that is what he did. So, yeah, I think we'll go ahead and get into my number 12 / first honorable mention, and that is the reason it's an honorable mention is actually because it's a TV show, Lost. Which I haven't watched the whole thing, so I guess technically I haven't watched this. I watched like the first season.
I've never watched it.
But I was looking through, and I do believe it's Hans Zimmer. I'll have to check. But I was looking through some of the stuff that he did, and I was like, oh my goodness, he did Lost. And I remembered, and I listened to it, and it's like, it's a pretty good soundtrack. So the reason I picked it is I just feel like Lost as a TV show would have been if it didn't have a good soundtrack, it wouldn't have done as well. And it's a great show. It's like everything about it is just so well done, as far as I've watched. But I think it really needed a soundtrack to propel it, because I think just adding a crappy soundtrack to like a really good show just diminishes it like so heavily. I mean,
Yeah.
it really deserved a good soundtrack is all I'm trying to say. So let's go ahead and give that a listen, and we'll be right back.
All right, and we're back. All right, so the first thing I'll address is it's not by Hans Zimmer. It's a Michael Giacchino score, which is interesting. I didn't know that he did Lost, and like I said, I've never seen it, but we listened to a little bit of it, and again, it's hard for me, I guess, to judge it because I haven't seen the show.
You kind of do need the context of the show.
But I liked it. I mean, it was the part we listened to had a little bit of piano in it. It was very nice. Had some string ensemble stuff. Very nice cello solo, which was it was really pretty. And again, I can't look at it in the context of the show because I don't know how it works. But what were your thoughts listening to it again?
So, yeah, listening to it again after quite some time, I will say this: it's forgettable. It's very plain. In some spots, the part we listen to, it's probably it's called Life and Death. It's usually played in a sad part of the show. I didn't show him any of like the really bumping like main title stuff. It's like bump ba da 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 bump ba da ba da bump. It's not like that. It's just very melancholy, and that's probably my favorite part of the soundtrack. It is well written, but it is very, I guess, similar to other stuff. And actually, mentioning that, for a second, it sounded just like the Home Alone theme.
Oh, yeah, we both looked at each other and
I was like, there ain't no way my boy just stole from Home Alone.
There was like 3 notes there, like same notes, same key. And we were like, oh my goodness, like that's Home Alone. But luckily it changed. It didn't steal it, So
really, that's why it ended up not even on the list, technically. It's good, but not quite good enough to be remembered. And part of the only reason that it ended up on here was because it's Michael Giacchino. So I guess the brand really does sell it. So
yeah, I guess. I mean, Michael Giacchino is one of those composers he's really built himself up.
Yeah.
Over the past,
but
really
like,
our lifetime.
In the context of the show, I think I was saying before that like the show needed a good soundtrack, and it's good, but the soundtrack did not need to overwhelm the show. The show is so good that if the soundtrack tried to be up to par with the show, it just wouldn't work out. So I think it fits. So let's just go on ahead to your number 11. And I'm excited to hear what it is now. So.
Okay, my second honorable mention, and I got my honorable mention and then Sam's, and then we'll finally get to the actual top 10 list. But so this is another movie I almost put on the top 10 list, but I ended up taking it off, and that would be Disney's Jungle Book.
I totally forgot. First of all, probably wouldn't have ended up on my list, just because not a huge fan of the Jungle Book.
Really? Well, see, I feel like with the Jungle Book, and I'm talking about the original Jungle Book from the 60s, I think.
Obviously.
However, the new Jungle Book, hot take here, is like the only good live-action remake that Disney has made. I think.
You know
Aladdin
what?
Was
actually,
okay.
I probably will.
I liked the Jungle Book. Lion King just didn't have the heart as the original. I haven't seen Cinderella, the remake. Nor have I seen.
Oh my gosh! I think
Lady and the Tramp.
We weren't. I don't think I was very old when that came out. Well, I wasn't old enough to like really get into it. But what I do remember is it was extremely boring.
Cinderella.
Yes.
The new one.
Or
the one that came out, I guess,
it came out
like 2015.
Yeah, somewhere around that. It was long enough ago to where it didn't catch my attention in the slightest. Maleficent, though. See,
I have heard that's like all right.
So I guess you can technically call that a live action remake. I watched it like one time. Don't really remember it, but I do know people who absolutely love Maleficent. Like,
it's definitely kind of garnered a cult following.
so if we're going to say like the Lion King, probably no.
Yeah.
The live action, no. But Jungle Book and Maleficent, I liked the Jungle Book remake.
Yeah, I thought it was.
I think
really
a lot
good.
of people were hating on it though.
Really, I loved it.
Yeah, I like the Jungle Book remake, and I'm excited to actually get into listening to this again because I would like to hear what this sounds like. So we'll be right back. Okay, and we're back. So let's talk a little bit about that. I would say that's probably better than some of the ones we listened to. I Want to Be Like You, which Micah did say that the individual songs like were what's good.
Yeah, I don't know any of the rest of the soundtrack.
Yeah, I don't know what the soundtrack is, but we listened to but everyone knows the songs of the Jungle Book, and they're really good. But first of all, me not liking the Jungle Book might have some slight bias. It's okay. I mean, I don't know. But I will say the music of the Jungle Book is probably better than the movie. I don't know if that makes the movie good or movie bad.
I mean, that's a fair opinion to have because the music is good. I mean, you've got "I Want to Be Like You," "Bare Necessities," "Trust in Me," the Vulture song at the end. It's called something to do with friendship. I can't remember what it is, but that's a good one.
It's a pretty good premise though for a movie.
Yeah,
I like that.
I think so. I've always liked the story. There will be times when I watch it and I'm like, this isn't my favorite, but then every now and then I'll go back to it and I'll be like, yeah, I like this a lot.
It's not my favorite of the old Disney movies. I will say that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that for me either. But it's always been a movie that I've looked at fondly.
And of the old Disney movies, you'll actually figure this out soon. I don't think it has the best soundtrack. And that's actually a little teaser into something that's a little bit later on my list. But let's go ahead and get into my next honorable mention. Oops.
You got a little sneak peek there of Jungle Book.
My next honorable mention is The Empire of the Sun.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So do you know what that is?
I know. I've never seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Give me the premise. I'm afraid of saying something incorrect.
Okay. So am I. Because let me tell you this. I watched this movie when we used to watch it a lot when I was really young. And great movie. And I was doing some research on it, and this is the one that flew under the radar.
Really?
Not many people liked this movie. I mean, I know it's a pretty popular movie, but it kind of flew under the radar.
Mm-hmm. But
my family loved this movie. And something I do remember, and this is actually a little bit of a story here, I play piano now, but this was the first thing that I ever taught myself on piano. Was like the main motif for this song.
Wow.
So the soundtrack's always resonated with me, and the reason it's not higher is just I'm not as familiar with the soundtrack
as some of the other ones later on your list.
Yeah, just because it's been so long since I've really invested in it, but I know it really deserves a spot, at least as an honorable mention. So I'm going to show Micah a little insight into the world of The Empire of the Sun, and we'll be right back.
So, we just returned from listening to a little bit of Empire of the Sun. Again, a movie that I have not seen, but I've known its reputation. One thing we did find out is that it's by John Williams, the music.
Yeah, I did not know that when I selected that.
Yeah, I had no idea. And and me and Sam were both kind of saying this when we were listening to it. Parts of it didn't really sound like
it did not seem like your generic John Williams soundtrack.
Yeah. I think he has a very distinct compositional voice. We were kind of bouncing some.
Yeah, it's pretty distinct because he takes half of it from other people's work.
Well, that's the critique he always gets, but
That was just a joke, by the way.
You're already. But yeah, John Williams, he likes his brass. He likes, especially in slow moments too. He often tends toward the brass, I think, and usually he goes to these big, overarching, sweeping melodies, which is what Empire of the Sun got to eventually. But at the beginning there, in the kind of quieter parts, it was interesting. It was kind of a different vibe than what he usually, I think, puts out there.
Yeah, it was a lot more of an intimate soundtrack than what he normally does.
And even if it is, I mean, I guess Schindler's List, another movie I haven't seen, comes to mind when I think of John Williams. And it's...
Oh, it sounded similar to Schindler's List. And I wish... I don't know. I don't think it would have changed. I mean, I'm glad I have my raw opinion. But I didn't want to put a ton of a single dude on, or female, on my...
Yes.
On my list.
That's also true. I didn't want it to be strictly John Williams or strictly Hans Zimmer or strictly whoever.
Yeah. So like, which as I go on, I realize like probably 3 or 4 of these of mine might be John Williams.
Yeah. But I mean, it's so hard to avoid because he's built such a just iconic, base of films that are all so good. But
so we've gotten through our honorable mentions and we've talked about them a little bit. So let's really get to the meat and potatoes of today, which is our real top 10 favorite soundtracks.
Oh my gosh, when you say it like that, goodness, because it's so, top 10 favorite soundtracks, like you said earlier, that's such, what's the word I'm looking
I think
for?
it's a very good representation of what we enjoy.
I think so, definitely.
I feel like we do have similar interests, but I don't think there will be much overlap.
Yeah, which your bet is that there won't be any. And so far...
There's been none.
We've only gone through 4, however.
So we have 20 more. So
let's get this started.
Yeah.
So, a little preface before my number 10. I kind of cheated, and...
I would like to know what you mean by that.
So, I did tell Sam this earlier. We were talking about it, and of course, I don't know his list. He doesn't know mine. And I said, for my number 9 and 10 slots, I kind of cheated a little bit. And I was like, but that'll make sense when we get to it. So my number 10 is Walt Disney's Fantasia.
First of all, I didn't even think about that. Which partly, you know what, it probably doesn't deserve to be on my list because I haven't watched it.
Yeah, so there you go. So first of all, if you haven't watched Fantasia, big recommend. It's way ahead of its time. It's an animation.
I will definitely say that. I've heard the music.
Yeah, you've heard most of the music. Animation-wise, I think it's a masterpiece. And here's the reason I thought it was kind of cheating is because none of the music is original. It's all, they have Bach in there. There's Beethoven Symphony 6, I think, some Stravinsky, some just different. It's all old. It's all older composers. Tchaikovsky.
I'll say this: I don't even think we need to pause on this one. And
you all can look up this music if you want. We can list the pieces that are in the movie in the description
because
below.
I can give my honest opinion about Fantasia. And I totally agree. It's way ahead of its time. But I will say this. As a child, when I watched it, I personally, 4-year-old Sam, it didn't get me. I'm sure it got 4-year-old Mike.
Well, it's actually kind of funny because I talked earlier about my long-standing fascination with classical music. I didn't watch Fantasia until about a year and a half ago.
Oh, okay.
So this is it's pretty... And I've only watched it once.
And wait, before I say anything, I did say that I haven't watched it. I have, I'm pretty sure I have watched some of it. But I have not watched it in a memorable period of my life in which I can honestly give an opinion on what it looks like. But I do know what it sounds like. And obviously it's taken from
older music.
But I do know, just from what people have said, it's very well selected.
Yes.
Very well put together.
It's very seamless.
Obviously it's a Disney production.
Right. This is
Walt Disney. It's just a thrown together thing.
Right. The animation is spectacular. The storytelling in it is great. If you want to start off with one, the most famous one is the Mickey Mouse with the brooms. And the hat, the sorcerer's hat. That's the music is Paul Dukas' or Dukas. I don't know how to say his last name. His Sorcerer's Apprentice, which is a phenomenal piece. I would recommend checking it out. But all the other segments in Fantasia are just spectacular. And it's so cool to me as a classical music lover. It's like a whole movie surrounded by it. And it's like...
And I would actually personally like to know where they got that idea.
Well, I think I can actually kind of answer your question. So, the kind of original general idea of Fantasia, I guess I don't know where they got the idea, but the general purpose of it was for, like, they would make the film and they had like 10 segments or whatever. The music is all conducted by Leopold Stokowski, the phenomenal conductor back in his day. But they would make the segments, and then a few months later they would show Fantasia again, but some of the segments would be different. Getting different pieces in there, so every time you went to see Fantasia, it was a new experience. That never ended up happening for, I think, financial reasons. World War II started up. Lots of different reasons why they could never make that dream a reality.
Yeah, that's like...
But it originally was supposed to be
first of all, I didn't know that, but that's like so...
It's pretty ambitious.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Ambitious. That's like a crazy idea to have.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And it's sad that we never got to see that take fruition. But what we did get is, I think, just phenomenal.
Yeah. So I think phenomenal is a good word for that one, and it definitely deserves a place on at least Micah's top 10.
Well, so that's why I put it at number 10. The music themselves is awesome, but since it's not original, I didn't want to put it above anything else.
So I'll go ahead and get into my number 10, which is so let me give an idea for kind of how I set up my list here. I drew from different genres. So like, okay, this is my favorite animated. This is my favorite. I didn't really stick to it that much, but I did want to have different types of movies in there. And I will say this, I don't watch horror movies. And neither does Micah.
Neither do I. Yeah, it's not my thing.
But I did want to add in a horror/thriller. I mean, this is a movie that my dad has watched. So how bad can it be?
Obviously.
So it is the soundtrack from A Quiet Place.
Okay. Was not expecting that, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, okay. So the reason I put this on here is because A Quiet Place, just like I think the last one I talked about, it needed a good soundtrack.
I mean, I guess when your whole premise of your movie is silence,
yes,
you kind of got to make up for it.
So have you watched this movie?
I have not, but I kind of know the plot. I basically know what happens.
All you need to know, everyone needs to stay silent. If you're not silent, you die.
The monsters.
Like
taking over Earth or whatever. Right.
Yeah. So I mean, it really it's very, I think it's going to be very similar to Lost, as in it could be forgettable.
Sort of minimalistic. And
kind of how like Home Alone was very repetitive. Mm-hmm. The Home Alone soundtrack was like the same thing over and over and over. I don't know if we mentioned that.
I don't think we did. It is. If you watch the movie, John Williams really doesn't stray too far from the groundwork that he lays at the beginning. It's all kind of the same.
Yeah, so that's kind of how this movie is. But I think it really draws you in. Because I remember when I first watched this movie, I rented it. Because I didn't want anyone to know that I was watching this horror movie. And I rented it, and I listened to it, and the music just draws you in so really? Heavily.
I never would have expected that from A Quiet Place.
I mean, like, it's not all that. It might just be the fact that everyone else is quiet. You have to have something to focus on, and the music is there to take your attention.
It's exposed.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and give that a listen, and we'll be right back.
All right, here we are. We're back. I just got my first glimpse of a listen, I guess, to A Quiet Place.
I guess I will say this. It is kind of sad that I don't know if I want to expose you to the music before you get to watch the movie.
You think? Well, okay. Well, I can, just from what you showed me, and he showed me two selections. One was a more sweet, endearing track, whereas the other was the horror, intense, thriller kind of more vibe. And I mean, I can imagine they both work so well with what the movie is trying to accomplish. Because what I know about the movie is, it's not your standard kind of I don't want to offend any horror film fans out there, but like, I think from what I've gathered, there's another layer. It's a very personal, intimate movie. Yeah,
that's a good word. I think that's what puts it on my list. Is because it has the great. It's definitely up there with like just listening to the Empire of the Sun. It's definitely, I like it better than the Empire of the Sun soundtrack, even though it's by some. I mean, I don't want to call him a no name, but somebody I've never heard before. Marco Beltrami.
I've heard of him before. I think he's done some pretty big stuff, but it's escaping me right now.
I mean, I'm sure he's done some other stuff because it's a pretty high budget movie. It's pretty hyped up. Mm-hmm. It's a good movie. Probably in my top 10 favorite movies, honestly. But the soundtrack, the reason it ends up on my list is because it has such a great tension that it builds. First of all, it never releases it, which is strange, but it works.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can definitely tell it's a movie about building tension and about not releasing it, kind of thing.
But when there is no tension, it does a very good job of being intimate. Which works especially when like, okay, let's say the soundtrack sounds intimate and calm, and then something terrible happens all of a sudden. It works so well. So let's go on ahead and let's get into your. I guess we're on number 9 now.
Yeah. So this is my number 9 pick.
Which you also cheated on.
I also
apparently.
kind of cheated on, but I think less in the face as Fantasia was. But you'll see. So my number 9, another Disney film. That would be Disney's. And I promise I think this is the last Disney. This is the last Disney. I wanted to get Disney kind of out of the way.
I haven't got to my Disney movie yet. I think I have 2 or 3.
I had, I guess 3 if you count Jungle Book. But this is the last one. That would be Disney's Sleeping Beauty. So
okay.
So let me explain. So I've always enjoyed Sleeping Beauty, and it's kind of interesting because just from what I've gathered online, a lot of people don't like Sleeping Beauty. A lot of that. Okay. I'm curious to know your thoughts on just the movie.
I don't like it.
Really? Well, okay, that's to be expected. A lot of people don't.
And the reason I don't like it, see, I think I haven't developed. I haven't gone and I haven't sat down and said, okay, I'm going to enjoy this movie. A lot of these movies that we're pulling out of the woodworks, the soundtracks are so good that they overcome all the movies we've watched in recent times, which means it's been a while since we've watched them. So I feel like I don't have enough to say
about the movie because you just haven't seen it or just haven't really developed an attachment to it, I guess is what you're trying to say.
Both, I'd say.
Okay.
Because I have watched it. So Sleeping Beauty and Snow White, now that I think about it, seem so similar.
They're pretty close. I think I've always preferred Sleeping Beauty, but
I think I prefer Snow White.
Really? Well, I know I've watched Sleeping Beauty more.
I've watched Snow White more.
Well, how at odds we suddenly are. I do enjoy Snow White, and I think Snow White is
it's the
one
same
of
premise.
Disney's best.
Evil woman puts curse on
young woman
that they don't like for some reason, and then, well, Maleficent had revenge. I will say Sleeping Beauty is definitely a deeper plot, I'd say.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny if you look at, if you compare the two villains, if you compare Maleficent to the Evil Queen doesn't like Snow White because of her vanity. Mm-hmm. She thinks Snow White's better than her. She feels that it's that kind of hatred.
Yeah.
Whereas Maleficent, who is obviously a already evil person, if I remember correctly, puts the curse on Sleeping Beauty, or Aurora, I guess, only because she didn't get an invitation to like the party celebrating Aurora's birth.
You see a lot of memes about that.
Yeah, it's like she arrives uninvited, and is like, why did I not get an invitation? And she's like really upset about it, and then she puts the curse on Sleeping Beauty. But despite, I guess, kind of a shallow reasoning as to her malice, I don't know. I've always enjoyed the film. I can think of going back when I was a little kid, I'd go to my grandmother's house, and because we didn't have the movie for whatever reason, but I'd go to my grandmother's house, and she'd like fix me dinner or whatever, and I was a little boy, and I'd watch it, and it's always kind of resonated with me, and then I'll go back and watch it like now, and it's just, I think it's a movie I can sit and enjoy. I can laugh at it. I think it's a beautiful film.
Yeah, it is a very pretty movie, and I think that since you mentioned that, I think that's an aspect of our relationship which we are similar. Because some of these like old Disney movies, I went to my grandparents' house, and my nana would set me up with her VHS tape.
My grandmother also had rolled out the old VHS tape,
and I would watch it. So we've talked about the movie, but I know nothing about the soundtrack.
Yeah, so the music. So, and this is another reason why I think I cheated, is because, once again, none of it is original.
Really?
Yes, even the iconic song.
It must not be very iconic, because
you don't know it. You'd probably recognize it if you heard it. The name is just left me. Something to do with a dream. It's all taken from Tchaikovsky's ballet of the same name, Sleeping Beauty. So you have Tchaikovsky, obviously Nutcracker, Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty. Those are his 3 big ballets, all massive hits. And the music is from the ballets all in the movie. Like I said, even that main song that Aurora sings like halfway through, the lyrics are new.
I do think
the melody is from Tchaikovsky.
Just to be more time intensive, I hate to hurt your feelings, Micah, but the classical music, I think I have a feel for what it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah, no, I wasn't planning on listening to this, because you know it.
I mean, obviously I do know it, I just need to hear it again, but like...
Right. No, yeah, I wasn't going to say
I think it's given definitely some insight into Micah, because...
Well, I will say, when I said I kind of cheated on Fantasia and Sleeping Beauty, it's just when you first told me that we were going to do this list, these were 2 movies that just instantly came to mind, because Fantasia... just, I think, a phenomenal soundtrack that works so well with the animation. And then Sleeping Beauty, I can remember going back, like I said, when I was a little kid. And before I knew that it was from Tchaikovsky, the music resonated with me. I can think of certain scenes in the movie where the music is, you can hear the music like no one's talking. And it's really good. Like, it's always just been kind of a personal favorite of mine. So I guess I kind of almost put this on the list as a favor to myself. Sort of, it's almost more for nostalgic reasons. I just have a lot of
I understand that.
emotions attached to it, I guess.
Yeah, I get that. So, okay. So let's go ahead and get into my number 9. So, now this is one that I didn't even think about at first, but I needed a musical. I guess most Disney movies are kind of musicals, because they have songs thrown in the middle of them. But this is like, if anything's a musical, this is a musical, because they don't say a single word without singing it in the whole movie.
I'm very curious to know what this is.
There's not a single word in the whole movie that they do not sing. Like, they have dialogue, but they also sing the dialogue.
What is it?
It is... I don't know what year it came out. I would have said it. But whatever years, Les Mis.
Okay. Wow.
Okay, and this movie kind of gets some hate from people who know music.
Really?
Like, oh, it's really not that good. They're not actually singing correctly. Well, you know what? I thoroughly enjoy... The fact that I love this movie is pretty much solely upon... There isn't... Okay, of the actual songs, none of them are bad.
Okay.
I can listen to every single one of them, and there's so many. Like, there's some, I don't even know if you'd call them songs, because they're conversations that people are having, but they're singing them. It's really a movie that me and Micah need to watch together to really get a full understanding. But I want to just I want to show him, like, the first opening song.
Okay, because I've never seen it.
I assumed you hadn't.
Yeah.
Which is Look Down. And Hugh Jackman is this prisoner having to essentially... All these prisoners are pulling a boat into a harbor, and they're singing of their terrible times. And if you didn't know this, it's about the French Revolution.
I didn't know that. But that's it.
So it follows kind of like a few different like storylines. One of them is a prisoner, and the other storyline is of these men who actually eventually are this dude's in love with his this prisoner's adopted daughter. I know it's kind of strange if you hadn't watched the movie, but it's great. I really I don't know if I suggest it like to watch it. I've watched it with other people, and I've actually removed certain scenes just because I don't find them appropriate.
Oh, okay.
In some ways.
I guess you got to be careful with movies.
Yeah.
But.
So I'm not going to suggest anything, but I will say, great soundtrack. So we're going to go ahead and get into that.
And we're back. All right, so that was my first glimpse into Les Mis, and man, it was so powerful. I think is a good word to describe it. I mean, you have, and from what little I've gathered about the story, these people oppressed the French Revolution, and then, or at least the part that Sam showed me, rising up in this grand chorus. I think it works so well with what the story is.
Yeah, it's definitely it's different. I'm going back and watching it. It was definitely strange to hear pretty much just music. A lot of like the background sound effects were removed, like like normal like people yelling and cheering, that was removed, and all you have is the singing, and every word was sang. Mm-hmm. Even dialogue.
the dialogue that he said before we paused there, I didn't expect it to be that much. It really is all singing, which I can't tell you if I like or not. I think I need to watch more. But
some people hate it, and I mean, it's not like I wouldn't want every movie to be like that.
Yeah.
But what they wanted to do, they did it, and they didn't really have any regrets about it.
I think they definitely pulled it off very, very well.
So that's enough about Les Mis. I offer up the soundtrack, and I suggest you listen to it. It's crazy. It's really good. So
he said we were listening to it, and he said he was getting chills.
Yeah. So just so we can move a little bit quicker, let's move to Micah's number 8.
All right, here we go. So this is a movie I've only seen once, and I actually got to see it in the theater. They re-released it, and my dad and I went to watch it, and that would be Back to the Future.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
with a score by great composer Alan Silvestri. Did all sorts of phenomenal movies, but I mean, I love the theme. It's grand. It's heroic. I mean, if you just listen to the theme, the French horns come right in there, and it's just a perfect encapsulation of just like the vibe the movie is trying to go for, which is it's fun, it's adventurous, it's not extremely serious. It's kind of a goofy premise.
I understand that, and I think this is another one, and as well for my number 8. I don't think we need to listen to it. You don't have to listen to my number 8 either, because we were actually talking about this movie earlier. Mm-hmm. So let me say my piece about Back to the Future. It's another one that I haven't really watched a ton of.
Really? Well, I mean, I've only seen it the one time.
But
it was enough to make an impression on me.
The soundtrack definitely, fun is the word for that movie. It works very well. And I will say this, and I know this is kind of away from the soundtrack, but who plays the main character? Is it Michael J. Fox? Is that his name?
I think so.
I think he made that soundtrack work, because the soundtrack is like, I think it fits the main character very well. Yeah. It
definitely goes hand in hand with the character that Michael J. Fox is showing us.
Yeah.
So it's enjoyable. I guess it's kind of a little bit lower down on my list. But I think for the most part it's pretty memorable.
Getting into my number 8. This is one I'm probably going to get flamed for. And this is one that I'm probably going to get made fun of for. Because it's a children's movie. And I really, looking back, does it deserve to be a spot above Les Mis. Probably not. This probably should have went at 10, honestly, and moved the other two up. But I don't want to say that prematurely because I absolutely love the music of this movie wholeheartedly.
I feel like I might know what it is.
Without a doubt. And I don't care what Micah thinks about the movie. I don't care what anyone thinks. It is Frozen.
Oh my gosh. Are you serious?
Yes.
Yeah, that's not where my mind was at all.
The opening track with them shoveling the ice.
That does hit.
That's stinking awesome. We have a producer over here, if you will, and he's just absolutely cracking
his
up
marbles.
at me. Yeah.
Which, I mean, I was not expecting, because
Love is an open door. Anna and
Hans.
Is that his name? Hans?
I think so.
Stinking awesome, bro.
Oh my gosh.
Love that thing. What's it? Let It Go. I know, like, it. I'm sorry. I know it's stupid for an almost adult male to love Frozen wholeheartedly. You know what? This deserves to be higher on my list, and I don't care what anyone thinks about that.
Well, it's really not. If you look at it objectively,
I want everyone listening to this to go back and listen to the whole Frozen soundtrack because it smacks.
I guess it's been. I mean, when it came out, it was such a massive hit. I can remember going and seeing it in the theaters when it came out. But
I did not go see it in theaters.
Well, I just remember I was because it was. This is well, I remember I was at the house one day, and my dad showed me the trailer, and he was like, "You want to go see it today?" Because it was just like the next
just
Disney.
Normal father-son conversation.
Yeah, obviously it was just the next Disney movie that was coming out, and I hadn't heard of it, and I watched the trailer and it looked like a fun time, and so I was like, I mean, sure, why not? and it's fine. Like, I enjoyed it. It's a fun movie.
I think it definitely deserves a spot on my list. I loved it. And I don't care what anyone says. Let's just gloss over this and let's get right into Micah's number 7.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So so my number 7 is, I feel like we've kind of had a string of animated films here, especially on my list. And I think this is the last animated film. But this movie scared me as a little kid. It might come to mind when I say this to Sam, because I've been humming this all day. And and I keep like having to stop myself because I don't want him to recognize what I'm humming. And he keeps being like, I don't know what it is, but I've been singing this under my breath all day. But that would be Prince of Egypt.
Wow. Okay.
Have you ever seen it?
Yes, I've seen that movie.
So this movie scared me to death.
I do.
As a little kid.
First of all, give me a premise just to make sure that I know it's the same movie.
So it's Exodus.
Yeah.
So
okay. Yeah.
So you have the Jews are the slaves, starting from the beginning of Moses' life to when his mother pushes him down the river to when he it ends with him getting the 10 Commandments from God. But I mean, it's such a real movie, and Hans Zimmer does the score absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, this movie definitely deserves a place on. I hate them. It's sitting right next to Frozen.
Listen, yeah, I kind of wanted to put it a little bit farther down, closer to 1, but the ones I have after this, I think, are really great, so I had to push it up. But it's just
definitely deserving.
Yeah,
that's a beast of a soundtrack.
It's awesome. I mean, that first. If you haven't listened to any of it, and if you have no desire to watch the movie, just listen to the first song, because it is a musical, which is it's kind of a weird artistic choice.
Yeah.
But listen to the first song.
Whether you're a Christian or not, like, that movie deserves a watch.
Yeah, it's been. I mean, people have called it a masterpiece. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a beautiful film. Just at least listen to that first. If you want to watch the clip of it, you can, but at least listen to that first song called "Deliver Us." I mean, it's just so massive. It's awesome.
So moving on to my number 7, we have, and you know what? I might actually have switched Frozen and my number 7. So Frozen actually probably could be my number 7, and this one could be my number 8, and that is The Lion King.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. Another Hans Zimmer score.
I'm getting dirty looks from our producer. Let's talk about movies. We're talking about soundtracks, bro.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen,
It's not like our top 10 favorite movies.
Well, yeah, I mean, The Lion King, I like the movie. It's good.
Definitely, of the old Disney movies, it's my favorite.
Really?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
It's probably up there with my favorite Disney movie ever.
Wow. I like it. I definitely
And I
10.
will, no. I will also say this without shame. You know what might actually be up there as one of my favorite Disney movies ever? It might be my number one Disney movie.
What?
Inside Out.
Okay, no, Inside Out is a fantastic film. I don't care what anyone
I feel
says.
kind of silly saying that.
No, listen, I completely
It's
agree
about a
with you.
12-year-old child
No, Inside
who
Out
happens to be a female.
No, Inside Out
I could watch that movie 1,000 times.
It's so... It works on so many different levels, I think. It's just...
I know that was a side note, and
Yeah.
and obviously we don't need to listen to the Lion King soundtrack again because
It's too iconic.
yeah, but like the songs are good, but as well as like the backing soundtrack is so good too.
Yeah.
It just works.
Yeah,
very
all
well.
of the music in it is just great. Great story, great voice acting.
And now that I think about it, I don't even know if you need to listen to my number 6, which is coming up next. But so do you have any specific thoughts on the Lion King? And because you were saying something about it earlier, like you didn't like it or something. I don't remember what you were saying.
No, I do like The Lion King. I'd say probably top 10 favorite Disney movies. Maybe top 5. I don't know, hard to say. If it was top 5, it'd probably take the number 5 spot. It's just never one I guess I was super attached to. But I can acknowledge its importance and its magnitude. I mean, it's a spectacular film with, like you said, an amazing soundtrack.
Well, I think the part of the reason that's so good, like it resonates with me, is because my sister kind of grew up on that movie. I have an older sister, and she loved the movie, and I guess her love for it kind of transferred into me.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
So, are we on your number 6?
This is my number 6 now. Yeah, we're
zooming through these right
this.
here. We're trying to get to them top,
Then top
3 or 5.
Yeah. So this is a movie that didn't immediately come to mind, and I think one of the main reasons I put this movie here is because I wanted to get some different composers in on there. But it is a great soundtrack. That would be The Batman, the one that came out just a few months ago, wasn't it? Back in May.
I will say I have heard like great things about that.
It's a Michael Giacchino score. A lot of it is some Nirvana song. I don't know which one, but the actual
things in the way.
Yeah,
it became a meme for like
that's a good like half of the film, but the other half, which is all Michael Giacchino, it's great. I mean, if you haven't watched the Batman,
I have not.
So you haven't. So I mean, seeing it in theaters, and it's a long movie. I mean, it's like over 3 hours, I think.
Really?
Or it might be just at 3 hours, but it's so different from Dark Knight and the Nolan trilogy, I think, but it still incorporates those elements. It's Batman as a detective. Mm-hmm. It's not Batman the superhero per se. It's real. It's Batman as a detective, which is what he originally was. It's such a dark film. I mean, it's in multiple ways. In terms of lighting, it's just a very dark film, which works to its benefit. And then in terms of the story, it's pretty.
Yeah. I do know that it's a beloved movie. I would say it's a beloved Batman movie.
Yeah, it came out to pretty high critical acclaim.
And it really, the DC universe really needed it.
Yes, they were struggling there for a little bit. They needed something to kind of revitalize.
They really need to like get on track with getting everything kind of together, like making sure everything's in the same universe. Essentially, what can we learn from Marvel?
Right,
is what they need to be doing.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the Batman, and I know we're zooming through these guys, but we really we need to get to these top 3 or 5, and we really need to hit home. So here we go. We have, and he mentioned this earlier, Schindler's List.
Okay, so that was a movie I almost put on my list.
So I have, and so far I will mention this: we have had no overlap.
That's true. We've come close. I think both of us have had some on our list that the other one almost put there.
Yeah, But
No overlap.
Schindler's List is the one that I haven't watched
Okay.
out of all these movies.
I also haven't seen it. However, it is a beautiful
And I think
score.
I was listening to it earlier just to make sure that it's as wonderful as I thought it was, and it's great. Definitely. Let me make sure of something here. Give your thoughts about it, Micah. Really quickly.
On Schindler's List. Well, again, I haven't seen it. It's another John Williams score. It's just phenomenal. It features very acclaimed violinists. It's like Perlman as the solo violin. He just does wonders to just paint such a grim picture. Kind of a funny story about the soundtrack. See if I can remember this correctly. So when John Williams, he went in to see Steven Spielberg, who directed the movie, and Spielberg showed him the movie, and because John had to see it. And so John Williams was like, all right, let me think about how I want this to sound. So he left the studio or whatever, and he just walked around. He took a walk around the building, whatever, just kind of gathering his thoughts. And he was blown away by the film. And he came back in and he sat down and he said, Steven Spielberg, you need a better composer than I am to score this film. I cannot do this work that you've created justice. To which Steven responded, I know, but the rest of them are all dead. Essentially saying that John Williams was the stuff, and he delivered on what is a phenomenal film with a phenomenal score.
An epic story, by the way.
It's pretty. It's one of my favorites.
So, I mean, I'm sure if you haven't heard Schindler's List and its soundtrack, I mean, obviously go give it a listen. But it's pretty. It sounds a lot. It's very similar to my number 11, if we want to call it that, of Empire of the Sun.
Yes, it is a similar kind of.
And it's a similar kind of movie overall, and they're both by Steven Spielberg.
Both John Williams.
Yeah, and both John Williams. And I really think this is a hot take, but Empire of the Sun is like the mid version of Schindler's List.
The slightly less impactful version of what Schindler's List is. It is I mean,
I can't really say that. Both of the movies, I don't have a very great grasp on the movies as a whole.
Right.
But
I think we can both recognize the.
And that's why it's not higher for me. Because I know Schindler's List is an epic soundtrack, but the reason it's not higher for me is partly just because I haven't watched it and I don't have a great knowledge of how well the soundtrack works. I know it works, but y'all know what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into your number 5. And we're starting to get into the
top 5.
The top 5. This is what matters.
Yeah.
So
I will say before I give my top 5, our lists have been pretty different. Not just in that they don't overlap, but in the kinds of movies that we're talking about.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's partly because I made it a point to pull from some different kinds of movies. And my number 5 is like a very different kind of movie. So
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I guess my list is a little bit more mainstream, but I think I added some little gems in there. Anyway, so my number 5, Jaws.
Okay. So actually, before you say anything, I was asking my dad, okay, what movies have great soundtracks? And that was the first one he mentioned.
Yeah, it's great.
Because my dad grew up on Jaws, I guess. I don't know. He's old.
It is an old movie, older than I think.
It's a little bit ahead of its time, honestly.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it's the movie that
Steven Spielberg did that too, as well.
Yeah,
right?
it's and John Williams. The power duo. I know it really. The first summer blockbuster. It really started both of their careers. Basically,
yeah, really.
It's what rocketed them both to fame. And it's just a great film.
If only Steven Spielberg had done Star Wars.
How different would it have been?
How different.
Interesting to think about. But the thing with Jaws is, and of course everyone knows the main motif. Dun, dun, iconic, right? And honestly, I was listening, because that's what everyone knows, but there's other music in the film. I was listening to it the other day, and it's good. I enjoyed it. It's fun. Because really, and I mean, you've seen it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have. So if you haven't seen it, in the middle of the film, when the three main characters go out to hunt the shark, they're doing all this crazy stuff on the boat out in the ocean or whatever, and the music it's kind of piratey. It's kind of enjoyable. It's supposed to be lighthearted in some areas. But really, I think I have to give credit to just the motif of the two notes, which is so clever in just encapsulating the film, I guess, because, I mean, if you haven't seen it, you really don't see the shark that much. You don't really get a good glimpse at the shark itself until
It's
about
the
halfway through the film.
OG tension.
Yes. There's a pretty famous scene where these two men are out on the dock late at night, like, and they're fishing illegally, doing something. I don't know what they're doing, but they're out there, and the end part of the dock like breaks, and one of the men, he slides into the water, and he's trying to get back up, and the other guy's trying to pull him back up, and they see the shark coming after him from a distance, and you hear the music, and it's this super intense scene of like, oh my gosh, is the guy going to pull up his friend fast enough before the shark gets to him? And he does, and you don't see the shark at all.
So okay, yeah,
it's a great scene.
I was going to say something. If that scene had totally different music, first of all, you wouldn't have even thought there was a shark there.
Yeah.
I don't remember the scene very well, but do you ever see any signs of a shark?
Well, you know it's the shark.
Why do you know it's the shark?
Okay, so I guess I should. You don't even see like a dorsal fin. There's like some wood or something kind of adrift farther out in the ocean.
So what?
And it starts to move toward him, and they realize that it's something pulling it with it. And it's stuck on the shark for whatever reason. And the music is going. It's such a tension building scene, and nothing happens, which is great.
What I was going to say was, that's what makes a good movie score.
Yes.
Without it, the scene would have been like, you wouldn't have even thought about any tension there. If you'd put some other music over that, then it would have been a fine scene. Oh, my friend fell into the lake.
He's got to get out now. Hurry. Yeah.
Hurry, yeah. But there wouldn't have been as much tension there without the music, and that's what makes a good soundtrack. Is if I replaced it with something else,
would it have the same
effect? Mm-hmm. Because there's a difference between, the scene was carried by the soundtrack, and the soundtrack was carried by the scene.
Yes, yeah. I will say one last thing about the movie as well, and it's pretty clever in the way it conditions you to recognize when the shark is there. So for the first half of the film, and you may remember this, whenever the shark is present and doing things, you hear the theme.
Yeah.
When you first get your first real glimpse of the shark, the three main characters are on the boat, and the camera's on Brody, the main character, and you can see the water behind him, and out of nowhere, the shark comes up and you see his face and like kind of looks at him, kind of thing. And it's not really a jump scare, but it's totally out of the blue because the movie has conditioned you to associate the music with the shark. But in that scene, there's no music. It comes straight out of nowhere, and it's I think it just works so well in the way that music conditions you to associate things.
So I think that's enough said about Jaws. I mean, everyone knows that one. But my number 5, we actually might need to listen to this one. I know we haven't listened to the past several, but this one actually might need to listen because a lot of people haven't even heard of this movie.
Okay.
I mean, it's a pretty popular movie, but I know people, I didn't know about it for a long time. And it is The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
Okay, yeah. So I'm getting 2 head shakes over here about not knowing the movie.
From our producer back here.
So if you don't know about the movie, it's about this dude who works like a 9-to-5 job at Life magazine. I'm about to spoil the whole movie. So a spoiler alert right here. Okay. So this dude works a 9-to-5 job. It's monotonous, but he escapes his life by having these daydreams. He always has these daydreams all the time. And then he works at like this photography magazine place. And he's really actually like the top dog when it comes to this one certain photographer who's a little bit of a recluse. And for like the 50-year anniversary, the recluse photographer, who will talk to no one other than Walter Mitty, who is the main character, he sends him a gift. And he says it's a wallet, and it leaves a note, and he's like, okay, here's a wallet, and I also sent with this the last picture that I want you to use for the cover of the magazine. It's like a really big deal. 50-year anniversary. It's their last magazine ever. I don't know what it was. Anyway, it's a big deal. And Walter Mitty cannot find the negative for the photo.
Really?
So the whole movie is him finally kind of living out these daydreams of action and adventure that he's always thought about but never got to have. And then at the end of the movie, and actually at the start of the movie, I'll add this, he tosses the wallet into the trash at his mother's house. Because he's so fed, he's like, oh my gosh, I don't have the picture. Like he's about to get fired because like all the executives know that Walter Mitty has the photo. So he's told all these executives, yeah, I'm working on it. So he has to like take like a 2-week leave from his job to go find the photographer and get the photo from him. He finds him in like the Himalayan mountains, taking photos of like a mountain leopard. And whatever, if that's even a thing. And they're talking, and he's been through this whole adventure. It's been wild. And the dude says, dude, the photo was in the wallet I gave you.
Oh my goodness.
And
so it's there in his mother's house the whole time.
In the trash.
In the trash. Wow.
And there's a whole lot more to the movie, but it's a comedy, actually. It's like, it's a dry comedy, I guess is what you would call it.
Yeah.
It's a great movie, and I think this is the one that I want to watch with you.
Okay.
It's really, I kind of hate I spoil it, but like it's such a good movie.
It makes up for it.
It makes up for it. But I say all that, the soundtrack this movie has no right having such a good soundtrack. It's a great movie. Why is the soundtrack in the world does
awesome?
It have such a good soundtrack, and it's also by a dude I've never heard of, but it's really good. I think we're gonna take a break here and give it a listen. So we'll be right back.
All right. So, I enjoyed that. It's nice. It's upbeat. I imagine it fits what the movie's going for.
Yeah, you really need to watch the movie to get a great feel of how well that soundtrack. It's really, if there's, I think what really resonates with me is, so we all know of these like coming of age stories where like these young boys or girls are finally coming into
Age.
a young adult,
Right.
and really maturing. But this is a movie that like it's a coming of age story for a middle-aged man, which is such a strange concept, but it works so well, especially with like the comedy. It's I can't begin to talk about how much I love this movie and how well the soundtrack fits it. So now that we've talked about that one, let's go ahead and get into your number 4.
All right, here we go. So this is a movie we were talking about earlier, and another movie I've only seen once, and I watched quite recently for the first time, actually. That would be Jurassic Park. Another John Williams score.
I almost put this on my list.
Really?
I was very close to putting this on my list.
It's good. And so I debated putting it on there because, again, I didn't want to be too John Williams heavy, to whatever. But I mean, I think it's just so like, I mean, that scene when they look out and they see the dinosaurs out there and the music swells. It's just like, it's just too perfect.
Yeah, you could easily, I think for like my number 6, which is Schindler's List, for me, you could definitely easily switch that out with Jurassic Park. A lot of these John Williams tracks, they're so good. They're also good. It's really what movie did it get paired with?
Yeah.
And how well did it fit the movie? Mm-hmm. Jurassic Park, I mean, it could easily go somewhere on my list.
Yeah. I think it's just so grand. I don't know.
I mean, it's definitely, I'd say it's John Williams. I'd have to say it's better than my number 10, which means that technically that would mean that it bumps off my number 10.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a lot like that, but it's really what I was thinking about and what really resonates with me. So I wouldn't change my list, I don't think.
I think, well, I mean, you really just hit the nail on the head. There's so many that I had to leave out. There's so many I've probably forgotten. There's so many ones I might change if I just went back and rewatched some older movies and like remembered how great they were. But
Yeah.
like I said, this was a hard list to make for me. But
So part of the genre thing that I did, which was choosing from different genres, which kind of gave me a really diverse list. That's part of the reason I picked Walt or Mitty, which is a comedy. But that's also the reason I picked my number 4, which is a Western.
okay, so I'm not very well versed in the Western genre.
And now that I think about it, there's actually one that I want to mention just before I get into my number 4, which is The Great Escape.
Okay.
That soundtrack is amazing. I'm not going to talk about too much. I'm probably not going to talk about really at all. I'm just going to say that's a great soundtrack. I didn't think about it until just now. But my number 4 is The Magnificent Seven.
Okay, so a pretty...
Not the new one. I haven't even watched a new one. I never will. The OG Magnificent Seven.
When did it come out? You know?
No clue. 60s or 70s.
So it's been a little bit. Okay.
So do you know, have you watched The Magnificent
I
Seven?
haven't.
Oh my goodness.
I know. Like I said, I don't know much about it.
I really don't want to stop to listen to it. I know you haven't listened to it, but I will say this. Probably like the best Western soundtrack of all time. I know, one second. Let me do some research. And Micah, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about your taste in Westerns, or the lack thereof.
Yeah, really the lack thereof. I think I would like them. It's just I've never watched any of them. I've never had a chance to. I know my dad, he likes Westerns, but for whatever reason, we've just never really dived much into that genre. I mean, it's always kind of intrigued me. I mean, it's this, really just this whole genre of movies that I've never dipped my toe into.
So yeah, so what I was doing there, I was looking up this dude who did the music in this movie, and this guy, I think it's really the part of the reason he's gone unnoticed in today's world is just because we've lost a taste in Westerns as time goes on, and I really think as a culture we need to be getting these Westerns
Bring that back. Who's the composer?
Elmer Bernstein. You've never
heard of him.
He did so many different great Westerns.
Really?
Yeah. Let me take a look. See here. So
I'm very curious as to all, because like I said, I've never heard of him. I'm not familiar with any of his work or anything.
So he did a lot of different ones, and I think you'll probably know some of his movies.
Which ones?
I doubt. I'm pulling it up right here. Okay, here we go. Oh, he did The Great Escape. That is that is totally coincidence. I did not do that on purpose. So he did The Magnificent Seven, which came out in 1960.
Okay.
Let's see here. The Great Escape. He did the music for To Kill a Mockingbird in 1962.
Oh wow.
He did the music for Sons of Katie Elder, which I'm pretty sure you probably don't know that one, but that's also a great Western. And another one he did was True Grit.
I have heard of that.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it, but
that was great Westerns. It's surprising. I think it's just because it's the Western genre that he has gone unrecognized.
As the Western genre kind of falls off.
Yeah.
The mainstream face in recent decades. It's not in the we're no longer in a golden age of
there's not many
Westerns.
John Wayne lovers out there anymore.
Yeah.
Like young John Wayne lovers.
Yeah. Fun fact, I share a birthday with John Wayne.
I think you mentioned that in the last one.
Did I? I think I did too, actually. Well, there in case you missed last week's
every episode will get the fun fact of Micah shares a birthday with John Wayne.
Let's go.
Okay.
That's the coolest thing about myself.
So let's hop to your number 3, and you don't have to listen to any of the rest of mine, actually.
Really? Okay, I do want you to listen to my number 3, but the rest of mine you'll know them.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, my number 3 also kind of ties into my birthday. So this is the movie on my list that I haven't seen. I wouldn't recommend the movie. I know there's some parts in it that aren't particularly friendly. You know what I mean? But I can't say. I mean, I've never seen the movie, but I was introduced to the soundtrack and it blew me away. That would be Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Never in my life have I heard of this.
Really? Okay, so it's a Dracula. I mean, I hope you've heard of Dracula.
What? I'm just kidding.
I was about to be
kidding.
extremely concerned. So I think one reason I enjoy the soundtrack without having watched the movie is because I've read the book. And fun fact about myself, the book first went into publication on May 26th, my birthday. So my birthday shares.
I'm pretty
the
sure I
publication
knew that.
date.
I'm pretty sure I knew that.
I've probably told you that.
I think you told me about that.
Yeah, I take pride in that. So I've read the book. It's a phenomenal book. I would recommend it. I can't say I would recommend the movie, but the soundtrack it's awesome. It's dark. It's brooding.
I'm surprised that a movie that you haven't watched ended up at your number 3.
It's just that is.
It must be a good soundtrack.
Well, I'll show you here in a second. I do think. Looking back, and as you've been saying your things, and you've been giving off your list, and I've been giving off mine, I might have put it a little bit too high, simply because I haven't seen the film. But I think I would definitely rank it pretty high up there, as you'll hopefully see here in a second. So let me show Sam this, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back. And so I'm immediately going to say what Micah just told me. Who knows if that deserved to be a number 3?
Well, see,
I guess in the context of the movie, it would be really good. It's a great soundtrack. It's definitely up there. But I think it, personally, I know you, obviously you love this soundtrack. Mm-hmm. I could tell you liked it.
Yeah.
But I will say this for me. I think it ends up probably going to be one of those forgettable ones for me.
Really?
Hot take. I know we disagree on this.
Well, I can't say because I haven't seen it. And it was my dad who actually introduced me to the soundtrack. He was like, you should, we were talking about soundtracks one day and he was like, this is one of my favorites. So I checked it out. And again, I will say, you probably are right. Maybe not number 3 worthy, but it's just one that I enjoy. So I wanted to give it a little shout out.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like up there. I think there's so many soundtracks that sound similar. It's hard to discern. I think it really is up to personal opinion of the actual movie as a whole in the end. So I think we're getting to my number, what now? 2?
Well,
3.
Have you done?
3.
Yeah, you're 3.
Oh my goodness. So that was your number 3.
That was my number 3.
Yeah. So, okay, here we go.
In hindsight, maybe should have been like 6, but it's okay.
Okay. I don't want to make you feel bad about your selection.
No, I know. I mean, in hindsight, I do agree. It's,
Now, this next one is one that we do not need to listen to because we listened to it along with my number 1 about a week ago.
Okay.
And Charles Cornell is the man. I totally suggest his channel on YouTube. He's the one who introduced me to this. Well, not introduced me, but really opened my eyes to how underrated the soundtrack is. It's a top tier animated movie with an even more top tier. I mean, it's my number 3, and I think it rightly deserves to be there.
What is it? I recognize. I remember hearing you talk about this, but I forgot what movie it is.
How to Train Your Dragon.
Okay, that's right. So this is a movie that I haven't seen in a really long time. However, I mean, the brass parts do be kicking.
Like, just go watch Charles Cornell's video. It's...
No more needs to be said.
No more needs to be said. How to Train Your Dragon, A tier, S tier even. So, just give it a listen, for real. Okay, so let's get on to your number 2.
Yeah,
my number
let us
2,
let the viewers go check that out for themselves.
Yeah.
So my number 2 and my number 1, they're pretty mainstream. I think my whole list has been a little bit kind of on the mainstream side, but they obviously hold a special place in my heart. I've always loved them. And again, all of this can be subject to change at any day.
Yeah, I could easily switch my list up right now.
Right, yeah. I mean,
maybe not my top 3.
Yeah. But I mean, I've had Prince of Egypt stuck in my head for a while now. Just because I was listening to it to prepare for this episode, and I was like, dang, this is good. But my number 2, pretty simple, Star Wars. I mean,
obviously.
you can't go. You can't go wrong. I mean, and I didn't pick just one. The whole trilogy is. I mean, the whole franchise rather is just.
Okay, so I'm gonna we don't have to listen to this one, obviously.
Yeah, obviously this is pretty.
But I will say this: I intentionally left Star Wars off my list.
I almost did. I almost felt that it was.
And it's not because it's like it could be ranked at number 1. Like that's how great that soundtrack is. But I wanted to leave it off first of all because I had so much John Williams.
Yeah.
But also number 2, I feel like it's just so. It's been used so much.
Mm-hmm. It has lost a little bit of the.
It was hard for me to like confidently say, okay, is this a really great soundtrack?
Or do I love it just because?
Or do I love it just because of the movie?
Yeah, I mean that definitely, I think makes sense, and it's one of the things I struggled with when I was thinking of this list. I was like, I mean, it's obviously phenomenal, but do I really love it as much as I think I do? And I think I do.
I mean,
it did feel a little bit basic, if you will, to put it so high up.
Yeah.
But for one,
I don't think you need to feel ashamed for placing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're not denying its importance and its magnitude and its greatness. But I guess one thing that really was hindering me when I was making this list was I only wanted to do movies that I've seen. So a lot of great movies I didn't feel comfortable putting on there just because I hadn't seen them in a greater context. But it's a great soundtrack. If you haven't seen the movies, go watch them. Well, not all of them.
the new ones are pretty trash.
But that's a whole dumpster fire. That's a whole.
We could have a whole conversation about that.
Yeah, we could have a whole episode on the new trilogy. That's not what this episode is. So Sam.
All right. Okay, so we're getting to my number 2, and my number 2 deserves to be there, without a doubt. I'm surprised it hasn't. I'm actually scared for your number 1 now, but I'm.
It's also pretty famous.
Mine definitely deserves to be at number 2. Okay. And I really hope it doesn't end up being your number 1 because I do not want to go this whole time being
without
right.
Overlap. Yeah. Okay.
And it is Tarzan.
Okay, so it's not my 1.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so Tarzan, and the reason this is such a good soundtrack, we don't need to listen to this. Phil Collins, my boy, done hit it out of the park on this one. Really, what made it so good was that it took like I don't want to call it mid because Tarzan's epic. It's also probably one of my favorite Disney movies. But it took a movie that would have been decent without a great soundtrack, and then it totally
made it incredible.
Okay. Like Phil Collins also did what's it called? Brother Bear.
That's right. Yeah.
Which I just thought about that one. That definitely deserves at least an honorable mention, if not a spot on my list. Phil Collins is a genius. Tarzan is an absolute. He just took a movie that probably would fly under the radar otherwise, and even today it flies under the radar. People don't like Tarzan.
Yeah, it's definitely not as mainstream as your other Disney movies.
And I think it's just because the premise, really.
It's different. It's, it's kind of an embarrassing fact. I haven't seen it.
Oh my goodness.
I know. I haven't. I mean, I've seen clips.
I know it doesn't. It doesn't follow the classic Disney princess trope.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of a.
I mean, it follows a man.
I mean, it definitely goes a different direction in multiple ways. But
so, if you haven't heard, everyone's heard the Tarzan soundtrack. But if you haven't, go right now. I don't even care if you come back to our video. Just go listen to it.
Go check it out.
Okay. So, Micah, I'm ready for your number 1. I'm certain it does not overlap with mine.
I highly doubt it. So my number 1 is pretty well known. Not as mainstream as Star Wars in terms of the fan base, I guess. But again, it's just a movie that I've seen, which met the criteria, and it's just so good. I would feel wrong if I didn't put it on there, and that's Lord of the Rings. Which is, yeah. So
definitely.
I mean, it's just, and you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen Lord
You haven't
of the
seen it.
Rings.
He hasn't read the books. He hasn't seen the movies. I've done all of that.
I know pretty much nothing.
You're still a baby when it comes to knowing Lord of the Rings.
I'm still in the womb.
When it comes to knowing anything about Lord of the Rings. If you haven't, I mean, and where do I begin? Like, the books are great. Tolkien is a fantastic author. But then the movies, they come along and, I mean, I can say, honestly, pretty confidently that we won't achieve something like that again in terms of that scope and scale.
Oh, my goodness.
Like, there's a few things I think that are just so large. You have in just terms of magnitude, you have the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and then you have the long build-up with Marvel, starting with Iron Man to Endgame. That whole thing is another thing I think we'll never accomplish again in terms of just,
you
get what I'm saying?
I didn't know what you were saying about connecting Lord of the Rings and Marvel.
No, yeah, I know they're so different. I'm just talking about in terms of just grand scale film achievement when it comes to just a large scope. Lord of the Rings just hits all of the dots. It's just, I mean, they adapted it so well. Howard Shore comes out with just a phenomenal score. It's so massive. It's so evocative of what the movie is and what the story is, and it's just so easy to connect.
Now, I have some food for thought.
Okay.
Would the score still be good if you absolutely hated the movie?
Okay.
Because I have a feeling you're slightly biased.
The movies are incredible. I think the score stands on its own pretty well.
Okay.
The movie definitely.
I haven't heard it.
The movie, yeah. So the movie definitely propels it. But I mean, I think it still stands on its own.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to give that a listen here in a minute, but I want to get to my number one, which I showed you last week as well.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was though.
Good, because this movie is in my top probably 3 movies of all time.
Really? You've had a lot of movies on this list that are like your top 10. I struggle with coming up. Like if you ask me right now what my favorite movie is. I
say that, but I don't really know if I mean it.
Okay.
So that's pretty arbitrary thoughts from me. But
what is it?
So, okay. Well, I want to give some build up. This movie is directed by J.J. Abrams.
Ooh, okay.
Who did the new Star Wars movies. Okay, so to talk about the new Star Wars movies, I will say this. They are cinematically beautiful.
Yes. They're beautiful films. The plot is a little bit lacking. It's just, I mean, nothing can live up to the, I think, original trilogy. I mean, people have their problems with the new trilogy. I have my problems. That's a whole other can of worms, if you will. But anyway, J.J. Abrams.
So J.J. Abrams, he in an interview, he actually said, okay, so what have we learned from Star Wars and what can we do with this movie? And I think part of the reason it did so well was because of the, I guess, I don't want to call it John Williams-esque movie. I don't even know who did the soundtrack for this movie. But it made the movie like 10 times better. So in that movie would be the new Star Trek as of 2009.
Okay.
Which I showed you last week.
You did. I remember that now. Okay. So, man, I feel so I feel so lame because Star Trek is a franchise, another one I haven't really delved that much into, which is sad. But so tell me about it.
So they really needed a revitalization because it didn't have a great fan base, and every time I hear the opening sequence, there's something really big that happens. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I know I spoiled like 2 other movies, but I'm not going to spoil this one. And the opening sequence, I get chills every single time. Like
really?
The big, just breakthrough opening of the brass happens. It's just like, it's just so much like, honestly, it's better than Star Wars.
Really?
I mean, the way that it happens, the way it's mixed. I think it's partly
the way it's presented.
Yeah, I think it's partly just because of the era that it was done. It was done a little bit better as far as like the cinematic, the way that the music was brought in to the shots that they were taking.
Right. So I just looked it up. It's Michael Giacchino did the score.
My man. My list is essentially John Williams and Michael Giacchino.
I mean, they're good. Two pretty different composers, I think, too, and two composers with different backgrounds and different legacies. I think that they've created.
I think it is. It's quite telling, just how influential they have been on music. The fact that they have just left such an imprint on music as a whole. I mean, you couldn't make a top 10 list without either one of them on there.
Yeah, doing a top 10 list without either would be an injustice. It just wouldn't be correct. I mean, I know it's not it's a thing about our own opinions, but there is a certain level of this kind of has to be there for it to be complete.
Also, I'd like to interject here. For the listener, if you hear any noises in the background, I have two very large men who have decided to sit and listen in on what is going on. So, towards the end of this podcast, they're making all sorts of noise, and I'm sorry for that. I mean, I know that's probably distracting. I mean, I know it's distracting for me. You probably noticed that my tone has shifted from jovial to annoyed. So,
go listen to some of these soundtracks, and maybe you'll won't be annoyed.
my soul will be uplifted.
Yeah,
but
be restored.
I would like to thank you guys if you've made it this far. I know we went long today, and I hope for your sake you didn't listen to this in one sitting. So I'd like to thank you guys for listening. This has been the second episode of the Anointed Bacon Podcast.